faces or pictures. And I have to say, this is a bit unusual for me still, even though we're 18 months into this, more than 18 months into this. But nevertheless, it's a real pleasure to have everyone here and to have Renée with us as well. So if I may, I'd like to just start with a short intro on Renée Phillips. So on top of being a dear friend of ours, Renée Phillips is a step parent, a foster parent, an adoptive parent, or a biological parent to half a dozen or so children and young adults. She also studies neuroscience and has experience teaching all ages. Her presentations draw from her academic training, her religious background, and her practical and humorous approach to life experience. And I must add that I've had the pleasure of having both my kids involved with Renée's school. And wow, all I got to say is what an amazing place and what an awesome experience for both the kids and for us as parents. So thank you so much, Renée. And with that, I will hand it over to you. So please go ahead.
Thank you, David. You're too kind. Okay, I'm going to start the presentation. About successful parenting, and I originally did this presentation as a for creating a new mind was the group that we were the topic that we were using before, and so this is going to be a refresher and kind of preaching to the choir. I know to a lot of people who are already familiar with these things, but I want to pull us all back and think about what is really different and unique about the Baha'i faith's approach to parenting and our beliefs about children, our beliefs about progress, that is going to make parenting different in this era, in this dispensation, this time of our lives. So it's important that you know a little bit about me as a person, so you know my background and the perspective that I'm coming from. I was raised in an evangelical Christian home, and my family is still very evangelical Christian. But around the age of 19, I discovered the Baha'i faith, and I still hold both of those faiths very close to my heart. And so I draw from both of those. I went to school for physiology and psychology at Western, and then I continued on with neuroscience. So that's my academic background. The psychology that I studied was not the sit on a chair and tell me all your problems psychology. It was more the developmental psychology, educational psychology, and cognitive psychology, like how the brain works and how the body works in that interaction. And then experience. So yes, about half a dozen. Let's see, I've got 2 stepchildren. I did teenagers before toddlers. That was a thing. And then I've had different foster children because we foster. And let's see, I think we added up when we had our 15th anniversary, we added up that we had 15 children over 15 years. I have biological children, I have adopted a child, and I have even children who are not official foster children, but have lived with us and grown up with us. So quite a collection there. So when people say, oh, so how many kids do you have? Depends how you count. So what is a spiritual child? If we're supposed to be doing some spiritual parenting, or how do you raise a spiritual child? I got to get the definition of what does it mean to be spiritual out of the way. And there's a quote from Abdul Baha that I like to refer to. The reality of man is his thought, not his material body. Or that when we live in the spirit, that is when we are being spiritual. And there's a difference between spiritual and religious. So I have this picture of Ned Flanders up because, you know, a lot of people think of religious as that outward showing, those community events, and sometimes people are religious without being spiritual. They go through the motions and they go through the ceremonies and they go through the rituals without really having understanding or letting it affect their daily life outside of the outside of church. So in the Christian community, we'd say, okay, they're a Sunday Christian, but then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, live your life however you want, but make sure you're there on Easter and holidays, and do these things because that's what's expected, but then don't let it touch the other aspects of your life. So that's not what I mean about spiritual. So the more religious you are, it doesn't necessarily mean spiritual. The more spiritual, some people think of spiritual as being this hippy dippy thing where, you're, I don't know, bring crystals and whatever feels right for you with no structure and no direction. And that's not what I mean by spiritual either. So it's helpful sometimes to compare, what does it mean spiritual? Well, if I'm trying to decide what's spiritual, maybe it's helpful to say what's not spiritual. So if something is spiritual, they are concerned with the spirit. If something is non-spiritual, it's concerned with matter. Okay. If something is spiritual, or if a child is spiritual, then they are going to be concerned about the relationships that they have, about the interconnectedness. And that this could be interconnectedness with other members of the family, other members of their neighborhood or their in-group. It could also be interconnectedness with nature, interconnectedness with the world around them and the environment. A non-spiritual child is going to be thinking about relationships as a matter of power or position, whether they are better or worse, or the leader of a group, or who they are in relation to others as a matter of power. A spiritual child will strive to have a better character. They will have better strive or feel that it's important to have psychological and emotional self and community. They're going to strive for those things, whereas a non-spiritual child will strive to have better material existence, better stuff, better position. And then spiritual has an orientation that life is eternal. There's a greater purpose. A non-spiritual perspective, life ends with the physical death, and that's it. I'm here for a while. Let's party it up. A spiritual child is going to be one who justifies oneself with God or the word or ideals. And by justifies, I don't mean makes excuses for. I think of justifies as, when you're doing your word processing and you have center justified, that means you're aligned at the center. And if you're left justified, all of the lines come always back to the left-hand side of the page. What are we comparing ourselves to? If you're justified with God, or if you're justified with the word, or you're justified with the ideal of love, the ideal of friendliness or compassion, then you're always coming back to what is the ideal? What is it that I should be doing? Instead of a non-spiritual perspective usually says, well, I'm better than that other person. I justify myself with the group around me, and well, I'm not as bad as so-and-so. I haven't killed anybody, so I'm not that bad. I only cheated once. I'm not that bad. Non-spiritual, it doesn't use an ideal or God or the scriptures as a justification or a way of reorienting themselves, but just says, well, am I better than what I think other people are doing? And so that would be a non-spiritual. Parenting. If we are going to talk about raising or parenting a child to be a spiritual child, then we have to think of what is the purpose of parenting. I have met lots of people who want to have children for their own glorification, for selfish reasons. I want to get one. This is unfortunately very common with people who've gone through a lot of loss. People who are adopting and fostering, they want to get one so that they can have a child, so they can. It also, I hear people's perspectives around divorce when a couple is going through divorce and they say, oh, well, I'll get one and you get the other one, as if these children are things or pawns to play with. And I don't think that that's the purpose of parenting, is to have possession of another human being, or again, have power over a group. Parenting is about a larger process. So here's a cute little poster I found, a child is the only known substance from which a responsible adult can be made. So the only way you can get a responsible adult is to start off with a kid who wipes his nose on things and doesn't know where to put his fork and chews with his mouth full, talks with his mouth full, okay? That's the only way you can get a responsible adult, is you start off with that. Is getting a responsible adult the purpose of parenting? The Baha'i faith says that there's one up. It's not good enough to just raise responsible children who can take care of themselves and maybe take care of some more kids. We have to have an ever-advancing civilization. Whoa, that means my kids have to be better off and more advanced than I am. I have to equip them to raise the standards of the entire civilization. That's the purpose of parenting. So to be a successful parent, I think, means to raise a spiritual child. Successful parenting is how you know if you've had successful parenting is you have raised a spiritual child. And this is going to require a new way of thinking. If we're going to have a new outcome, a child that can advance our civilization, a child that has better off than us, a child that is oriented to the spiritual, then we're going to have to change the way that we think about parenting. And there are 4 ways that I was thinking about this. I'm going to go back to that. Here's the definition of a spiritual child. And I would suggest that these are the same qualities of a spiritual parent. Spiritual parent is concerned with the spirit, maybe not how many toys the child has. A spiritual parent is concerned with the relationships that they have with the child and the relationships that the child has with others, and not as concerned about the state or the status of the child in society, like whether or not they're the team captain or they're the best in there or they're competing with their classmates. A spiritual parent is going to strive to have better character themselves and a better community. A spiritual parent is going to have the orientation of life is eternity, and the standard that I'm going to judge my actions on, and I'm always going to go back to, is God, the scriptures, the ideals, the virtues. When consciousness, when the way we think about parenting is expanded, so is the potential for action. There are some obstacles to thinking in a different way. One is the way that we've always been doing things is so much easier to keep doing things that way. Okay, so overcoming inertia is difficult. If we weren't going to change the way that we parent, it's going to take effort, and effort, well, I don't know, it's hard. Sometimes when people bring new ideas up about parenting, it can feel a little bit like criticism. So, if people say, well, what should we really do? Have spanking? It might feel like criticism. Are you saying I'm not a good parent if I spank? Are you saying I'm not a good parent if I let my kids watch this, or I put them into this extracurricular activity? Some new ideas seem like criticism, and they don't have to be, but they can feel like that. They can feel like somebody's judging us. Another thing that is difficult when we're trying new things or trying a new way of thinking about parenting is this idea that we don't know what the outcome is if it's a new way of doing things. And there's a little bit of a loss of control, especially when we look at what we're being asked to do, where we're not controlling the child's actions, we're nurturing the child to choose their own actions in a positive way. So the consciousness, or the things that I think the Baha'i faith brings to parenting that is a little bit different than what is out in mainstream parenting and has been the traditional parenting ideas up until recently, are these 4 main ideas. And maybe people, especially in this group, are very familiar with these ideas, but some people are not familiar with them. And that is that the human being, the human soul, those children are noble beings. They are born noble beings. They are born minds rich in gems. They have qualities within them already. They are loved and created, and they have rights and responsibilities. So I said that they are noble beings. That comes from a quotation from Baha'u'llah. It says, "O son of spirit, noble have I created thee, yet thou hast abased thyself. Rise then unto that for which thou wast created." How different that perspective is from you were born a sinner. You were created noble. Rise to what you were created for. So that doesn't mean that the child was born perfect. Shoghi Effendi says that's not the case. When the child is born, it's helpless and it's imperfect, even is naturally inclined towards evil. We have to train the child away from those inclinations. We have to adjust their behavior and control, suppress, regulate. We have to do those things for moral development, but they are created noble. They have this potential. How does this differ from the views? What are the implications of the idea that a child is created noble, has the ability to express nobility? What's the child's view of self? How's that going to change how they view themselves? Do we have anybody who would like to comment on that? I found this particular idea very revolutionary, maybe because of my background in evangelical Christian homes. But I'll open it up to the floor just for 1 minute. Okay. Quiet crowd today. I used to say to my students, I get paid by the hour, so it's okay, take your time. I'll just wait for you to answer the questions, but I'm not getting paid by the hour for this, so we'll continue on. Okay, the second revolutionary idea is that man is a mind rich in gems, and there's my cutie patootie in his little box looking around at things, curious as anything. Okay. Regard man as a mind rich in gems of inestimable value. Education can alone cause it to reveal its treasures and enable mankind to benefit therefrom. So this is an allusion to the idea that within us, we have the qualities that God gave us, these virtues, the ability to reflect God's nature to others, love, justice, compassion, creativity, curiosity. All of those things are within us and they can be nurtured and brought forward. And then the whole point is at the very end, and enable mankind to benefit therefrom, not just enable themselves to get ahead, but all of mankind is going to be benefited when we look at children this way. It's not that children are blank slates and we can just fill them up with whatever. Anybody who's had a child knows they come out with their own personality, and every child is different. The education that we give our children should be both about academics, but also about the quality of the heart and character. This is a very commonly referred to phrase in education in high circles, that this is the reason the child who conducts himself well, even though he be ignorant, is of benefit to others, while an ill-natured, ill-behaved child is corrupt and harmful to others, even though he be learned. If, however, the child be trained to be both learned and good, the result is light upon light. So we want our children to be light upon light. The third idea that is different, that we can change our mind about, is that children are loved and created. And I have a picture here of my baby sister. She was a surprise, let's say. My stepmother was 46 when she was born. She was not expected. And this little soul has been loved from before her creation to before her birth, and is just a joy to have. I will say that my experience of fostering has been a little bit shocking sometimes, because people will come up to me as I have a foster child and they'll say, what's wrong with him? Why doesn't anybody love him? Why doesn't somebody want him? There's nothing wrong with the children. These children were loved before they were created. They were created for a purpose. All the children who were given to and born to families that can't maintain a safe home for them, they are still loved. They're still created. They still have a purpose, and they are noble. And it changes the way we think about adoption. It changes the way we think about foster children, unplanned children, teen pregnancies, disabled children, when we think that this child was loved and created. The final thing that is unique in the Baha'i faith that I don't find in other places very often is the idea of rights and responsibilities. According to the teachings of Baha'u'llah, the family is a unit, and they have to be educated. All the virtues have to be taught to the family. The integrity of the family bond has to be constantly considered. The rights of individual members can't be transgressed. And that idea that the rights of the son, the father, the mother, none of them must be transgressed. Wait a minute. The son has rights. And I know that the United Nations has put together the rights of the child. The rights of the child and the rights of the parents and the rights of the mother and the father, that each person has value and responsibilities, but also rights, is a different way of thinking about how a family works, and that we have obligations to each other. There are some listed. I'm not going to go through all of them, but as you read through Baha'i scriptures and things, and as you think about your own experiences, there are lots of rights and responsibilities listed and outlined in different compilations. I won't go into them too much right now. The idea that other people have rights is kind of different than a traditional dad's in charge and everybody else has to do what I say. Or mom and dad are in charge and have to do, and the children have to just obey. It's also different than our Western culture, where the child grows up and has no responsibilities to care for their family, care for their mothers or fathers after they leave home, and see you later, I'm an adult now, I'm on my own. The idea that relationship continues even when a child reaches adulthood, even when a child is an older child, that each member of the family, no matter what their age, has a responsibility to each other, and that they all have rights. That can be a little bit fearful for some families, in a very different way of looking at family units in Western and Eastern cultures. Are there any comments about those 4 unique ideas in the Baha'i faith? The nobility of the child, mind rich in gems, rights and responsibilities, and loved and created. Any questions about that right now? Just take a little break. I know that most of the people on right now are familiar with a lot of these writings. Was there any that were presented that you hadn't thought about that as related to parenting, or you hadn't thought about that as related to culture? Or you guys all knew that already, and so I'm just talking for nothing. Okay, I'm gonna have to start calling on people. Is there anybody who has parenting experience and can verify what I've said? Back me up here Anybody agree?
Yes.
I second this. Third this.
Which part do you second?
That they were created noble. Well, all of them really, but that's the one that stands out to me.
Okay.
I found the part about rights and responsibilities especially interesting. It's something I hadn't actually thought about before. And I think it's really interesting because, you know, those bonds last a lifetime, right? And we don't often think about, you know, our responsibility first as a child and then to our parents, and then for parents to children and vice versa. So that's interesting. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. That one comes in context when people are wanting to get married, you know, and they ask for the blessing of their parents, whether you're 24 or 48 or 80. If your parents are alive, you have to ask for their blessing, their consent to get married. Whether you've been married before or you've never been married before, you have to ask their consent because you're joining two families together. So age is not the limit for your responsibility. It doesn't, there's no time limit, statute of limitations there. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to continue on then. The last part of the presentation is a little bit more practical, and that is that I want to give some ideas about how do you do this? Like, okay, so that's a great idea. Everybody's noble, everybody's loved. Yay, we have rights and responsibilities. Okay, but how do you like go day to day raising a kid when you're tired and when you have work to do and you have other things that you're responsible for? And how do you know if you're doing a good job along the way? So there are 4 components to raising a child. There's 4 influences. And I just wanted to point out here that it's not only parents. So just like take a little bit of the load off of your shoulders, because it's not only parents that are responsible for how your kids turn out. There is nature, what they come into the world with. There is nurture. That's your job. There is opportunity. I would say that's also your job, like, but only to an extent, only for the first few years. And then there's the effort of the child themselves. Okay. So nature, there are kids come with their own physical abilities, the things that they are attracted to, and their own unique personalities. My first baby girl, when you showed her a book, she would kick her legs and clap her hands and get all excited. And she was so excited for a book, and you show her a rattle and she'd just like, what is that? She'd just be flat, not interested at all. Show her a book again. Whoa, wow, but that's the book. And to this day, she loves reading. My youngest daughter, she had the same reaction the first time she went into a shoe store. It was like all these walls of shoes. She was so excited. I can't believe this is Payless. Okay. She just loves shoes. She would walk around with shoes. So there's different things that people are attracted to. And you know what, one person, same household, same set of toys, that what one person likes can be completely different than another. You also don't have control over the effort a child puts in. So here's a butterfly, beautiful butterfly, but if you notice part of the wing is broken, it's okay. This butterfly can still fly, but it's probably going to take more effort. For some kids, it's a lot harder to sit still and listen. And for other kids, it's just fine to sit still and listen, and they'd rather sit still than move. Each child is going to have to overcome their own restrictions and their own difficulties and put effort into compensation for things. I love this little cartoon though, the little engine whose parents did everything for him. Push me, Mom. Well, I'm waiting. Instead of the little engine that could, they have to put in effort too. They have to be given the opportunity, but they have to be given, they have to put some effort into developing those gems and those qualities and striving for themselves as well. That brings us to opportunity. my kids hate this quote, but I love it. While the children are yet in their infancy, give them the advantage of every useful kind of knowledge. So give them everything that they can get. Okay, let them share in every, craft and wondrous piece of art. Bring them up to work and strive and accustom them to hardship. That doesn't mean that we put undue hardship on children, but we get them used to discomfort. We don't give them everything that they want. We don't make it easy in every way because they have to work. They have to learn to strive. They have to be accustomed to hardship. Now, that might be in physical senses, going camping or something like that. In our everyday lives, we are told as parents over and over again, oh, you have to do this for your children. You have to make beautiful snacks for your children. I see these YouTube videos where you can make the children's sandwiches look like cartoon characters, and you only have to put in 40 minutes per sandwich that you're making. That's not accustoming them to hardship. And they can make it's very creative and artistic, and every once in a while that's fine, but gratitude is something really, really valuable, and without experiencing hardship, we don't have as much gratitude. Also, we don't grow as much if we don't have anything to work towards or any difficulties in our life. So this is an inverted U hypothesis, that where basically you get very good at an activity if the level of difficulty is at the right level. So if a task is too easy, you're not really learning anything. If it's too hard, you're not learning anything. You have to find that sweet spot where they are capable of doing it and they are learning. Maria Montessori was observing this in children and found that for academics, but this also applies for your character development and personal growth and striving. Not that it has to be really, really hard, but not too easy either. When they are able to do something, they should do it, and they should strive to do it and strive to work harder. So how do you do that? Create an environment for success. Create an environment where your child could be successful. So provide them with opportunities to try new things. I find it helpful to construct routines for reflection for them and for you. Sorry. Here's the little one falling asleep in the car. Probably not the best example of lost my train of thought. At the end of every day, we have a habit, a routine of asking, what was your favorite part of the day? What was something that you could do better? What was one of the gems that a quality that you needed more of? And then saying a prayer. So it's kind of a sandwich thing where you have a good something good to look forward to or reflect about. What did I do really well? What virtues did I show really well? Which ones do I need to work on still? And let's ask God for the help and gratitude and thank him for the opportunity. It's okay to make mistakes. And if you're going to nurture somebody to create an environment for success, they have to be able to make mistakes and they have to be able to ask questions. So here are two little ones who are sharing a very messy thing. So getting messy, making mistakes, this is part of providing an opportunity to nurture. And I think sometimes we're too interested in making sure that their clothes are perfect and their hair stays nice and they don't make a mess. And yet sometimes it's necessary for them to try things and spill things and try to pour the juice on their own or something and not be successful, but learn from that experience. So the other part of it is to shape self-talk. We use the virtues guide at home. If you think of there's a winner and everybody else is a loser. If the person is talking, the child is talking to themselves like this, and this is really evident in children who are about 3 years old to about 6, 7 years old, you will be able to hear what they're saying to themselves about themselves. We have a rule, we have a rule that you can't insult any of my children, even themselves can't insult my children. So we don't allow that in our house. Use the language of virtues. If they are missing a quality of patience, oh, please be patient. It looks like if they're stamping their feet or needing attention, choose the virtue name the virtue that they're needing to express, and notice the good things. Praise without distinction. I heard one Baha'i tell me it wasn't that we praise without just willy-nilly and we always praise, but without distinction means without comparing to other people. So is this a good effort? It is a good effort, not a good effort compared to your brother. Did you clean your room? Yes, you showed cleanliness, not you showed cleanliness almost as good as your sister. Okay, so without distinction, without comparison. Another part of nurturing is the example that we set. So I have here for modeling spirituality. This is a third aspect of parenting, and the part that we can control is to model spirituality. And I have this video that I found very moving. So hopefully you can hear it. Like rain again today. Dark clouds gather and fill the sky. Don't know how to talk to you, just know how to say goodbye. You ain't gonna try this license! Go back where you came from! Go back where you came from! From the, that's a really hard video for me to watch. And a lot of people might be thinking, oh, I'm not smoking, I'm not yelling, but the kids are watching us. And I think our example is so powerful to them, our example of what we do. This next quotation is from the Universal House of Justice, which is the body that guides the Baha'i community internationally, independent of the level of education. Parents are in a critical position to shape the spiritual development of their children. They should never underestimate their capacity to mold their children's moral character. For they exercise indispensable influence through their home environment, consciously created by their love of God, striving to adhere to their laws, their spirit of service to his cause, lack of fanaticism, and their freedom from corrosive effects of backbiting. When I will give the example of my mom. My mom, when she was, my mom would get up every morning before we all got up, before anybody else could see, and she would read her Bible and do her devotions then. And we would not really notice. She wasn't showing us or telling us, hey, I read the Bible this morning. She would just go up and do it. And it was something that was important in my upbringing, that that showed me that it was important. Her example of setting aside time in the day was an example of that. The last part about nurturing that I wanted to bring up was maintaining the fortress of well-being. And this is something that some people don't consider when they think about the relationship of parent and child. They think about the mom, the relationship of the mom and the daughter, the mom and the son, or the dad and the daughter and the dad and the son. But one of the really important things about the role as a parent is actually to maintain that marriage fortress. So marriage is considered or referred to as a fortress of well-being, or that's the intention of marriage in a Baha'i family. We are supposed to demonstrate a healthy pattern. So in that last that video that I showed you, those were demonstrating unhealthy patterns, but you can demonstrate healthy patterns too. And how you treat each other is how your children are going to learn how to treat their partners and their coworkers and their friends, how you speak to each other, how you deal with conflict. And just the other about healthy patterns, I remember one time, one of our stepchildren, this is my husband and I, by the way, one of our stepchildren said, well, you guys never fight, so how am I supposed to know how to solve problems? And it wasn't that we never argued or we never disagreed, it's just we never fought, we never insulted each other, we never called names, we never dug in our heels and attacked each other. We attack the problem, we say how we feel, but we don't attack each other when we're arguing. And it had gone unnoticed that no, actually what we're doing is and I remember we used to discuss things, of a more heated nature behind closed doors. Sometimes it's good to demonstrate those discussions in front of the children so that they know how to do it. As long as it's respectful, it's okay to disagree with somebody in front of them. Another aspect, and this is important for people who are doing fostering or are doing single parenting or who have adopted, remember that you are to respect the parents of your children, whoever they are. All children are still going to have a natural bond to their birth parents. And they know that they are part of them, that parent, that they take after the parents, that they take after those qualities. And so you must be careful, even if you are not able to work or be married to the parent of your child, even if that parent has ended up in prison or has lost rights or custody of the child, not to disrespect that parent in front of the children and to look for their best qualities, because those are the qualities that the child will see in themselves. Make your fortress of well-being, your marriage, a place of refuge for your children, and make your home a place where your children can come and be safe. So, successful parenting means that we're raising spiritual children. Raising a spiritual child requires nature, nurture, effort, and opportunity. We only really have control over nature. How your child turns out is not only a reflection of your parenting. And I heard an excellent discussion of this on a Christian radio station where they were using the example of the prodigal son. And they said, look, one son in this parable, and if you're not familiar with the parable, go look it up, but I don't have time to cover the whole thing now. One son in this parable that Jesus told, he runs off and he leads a hedonistic life, and then he realizes he made a mistake and he comes back. Another son, he gets jealous and upset about his how he worked so hard, and he's resentful of his brother and he's resentful of his dad at the end. In this parable, notice that the example, or what the father in this parable is supposed to be God the Father. And God the Father did not make an error, and yet he had 2 kids that both had these bad qualities. A perfect parent can still end up with bad kids, and an imperfect parent can still end up with great kids. It's a combination of many different factors. So just take a little bit of the weight off your shoulders and know that it's not all up to you how your kids turn out. You only have opportunity and nature that you can supply them with. So that's the raising successful children, successfully parenting children to be spiritual beings. And I hope that that is helpful practically. And oh, I like that. Roxanne has her hands clapping for me. Thank you. Thank you, Roxanne. Hopefully that is helpful to people practically and kind of like more philosophically.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Renee. And maybe we can open it up to any questions.
This is a quiet group.